and we cut to black to some cool metal song playing as credits roll, and that is my pitch for Man-Wolf.
Oh, this was wonderful, man.
This is amazing.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Has to Do with Spider-Man, I think. Thank you for tuning into this latest episode, this latest guest episode. My name is Jarrett.
I'm Peyton.
And joining us today for our latest guest episode is, you may recognize him from the TikTok or YouTube channel, Mr. Radtastic. Mr. Radtastic.
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me on for this guest pitch. Sharks, today I am asking for a 1 hour-ish of your time for 100% of my idea.
Sounds like a plan.
So, Rad, do you want to... Oh, go ahead.
Noah is missing. He has yet another basketball tournament today. Actually, this time he's playing baseball tournaments. So
gotta love those sports tournaments that happen in late August.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or October when this airs. Rad, do you want to give us? Do you want to tell the people listening at home or wherever they may be, who you are and kind of what your level of experience is with sort of Spider-Man and specifically the Sony movies?
Oh, yes. For those unaware, I am Mr. Radtastic. I am the loudest man on TikTok. Maybe. I got my start on TikTok by loudly yelling about how cool Hugh Jackman looked as a werewolf in the 2004 movie Van Helsing. That spawned into a series of me rating werewolves, and then one day I just started talking about superheroes, my actual true life passion, and those videos popped off beyond all belief. And I started a series called Harmless Headcanons, where I talked about like just the headcanons I had in mind for some heroes. And then eventually people were realizing these are a little bit more than headcanon. This is like full-blown your own continuity. And I came to the full confession, yes, I've been writing my own DC Cinematic Universe since I was 17 years old. For reference, I am 31 now. And it is 60 movies and television series long. They are all interconnected. They cross over, all that fun jazz. And that has been the bulk of my experience on TikTok. My experience with Spider-Man goes back to just when I was a little kid. I watched the Tobey Maguire movies growing up. I watched the 90s animated Spider-Man. It was on one of the channels I had for only a little bit. I only had 3 kids channels growing up, and one of them was Kids WB, so I was mostly raised by DC. So I got into Marvel later in life. But then I very much got into Marvel. I've read a couple hundred issues of various different runs of Spider-Man. And then of course the Sonyverse started, and hey, look, they're fun, right? They're fun sometimes. I could sit there. I get really peeved with lack of comic book accuracy or respect to character or character history or character motivations. I'm not the most jazzed behind a lot of what Sony had done. No tears. I have seen almost every single one of them. I have not yet seen. I have not found the time to fit in Venom: The Last Dance or Craven yet. I have seen every other one multiple times. I don't know why I do this to myself, but they are fun. At times, I can see like flashes of love for characters. Mm-hmm. But really, the universe left me sort of wanting for more. And then you guys reached out, and you guys told me about your podcast, where you took the Sony universe and ran with it. And so I started listening. I am fully caught up to all the episodes that have released as of the time of this recording. You guys are doing a wonderful job. It is clear that you actually care about these characters and have read comic books. You guys are doing truly fantastic work, taking the Sonyverse and turning it into something that, damn it, I respect. You guys are doing good work.
Well, thank you so much.
What's been your favorite episode so far?
I really liked El Diablo. I was all here for the tournament arc and everything. Sorry, El Muerto. I was cheering at work during some of it. I was having an absolute blast. And of course bringing in Walton Goggins. Fantastic. Absolutely loved it. You guys are
got to get the GOG in there.
Yeah, you guys are doing great. And then Mr. and Mrs. Parker was a lot of fun, and then the absolute brutal ending recently to the Parker family. Good Lord, yes, and also the brutal ending to the Sabeloff family. I can't remember what her actual last name is, but Silver Sable's family in that. I was like, good Lord, these guys are going for it.
Yeah.
Yes. Have truly having a blast listening. Look forward to each episode.
Thank you, man.
Well, thank you so much. That's
we just recently recorded
my heart.
we recently recorded Big Wheel, which at the time of this recording will be coming out next week.
Oh,
and
I cannot
wait. After that will be this episode, but we also pre-recorded Peter and Prowler. And I'm just gonna say, man, you're in for a treat.
I cannot wait.
We had a lot of fun with Big Wheel and Peter and Prowler. I think that this second phase is going to be so much more fun because we're not really grappling with, having to worry about Venom: The Last Dance or Kraven coming out. We're not stressed about all that stuff. So
you were freed by the shackles of corporate ideas. You guys are free to actually run with your own stuff. You don't have to sit and wait for them to see if anything you're about to say is about to immediately be uncannoned because they introduce a frickin' taxi driver named Miles Warren and everything is suddenly ruined.
I've said this in the past on the podcast, but the idea of taking just one superhero and their rogues gallery from this massive Marvel universe and creating an entire universe out of it in isolation, immediately most people's reaction is why? Why even bother? Especially focusing on C, D tier list villains. Why even bother? You don't have Spider-Man, nobody cares. But the idea of taking, and I've said this before, but the idea of taking people who have like 2 comic appearances, like El Muerto, who with literally nothing to go on, and taking what little is there and being able to extrapolate from it in unique ways in order to turn them into anti-heroes, full-on scumbag villains, outright heroes in some case. It's so much fun. Mm-hmm. And it's so it proves to me, especially I was a doubter of Sony from the beginning, still am after the fact, and what they tried to accomplish. But it proved to me that the idea in and of itself had legs.
Yes.
Because of what you can do with these characters if you allow yourself to be creative.
Right.
Instead of just trying to throw something out there so that for corporate reasons to be able to keep making money for that much longer.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, talk to us a little bit about the character that you decided to pick. People who clicked on this episode know that it's about Man-Wolf already, but what drew you to Man-Wolf?
I think my intro to my TikTok channel does a lot of the explaining for me.
Mm-hmm.
I love werewolves. This is a big thing. I've loved them my entire life. And so you guys reached out to me, a guy who screams about werewolves, superheroes, and fan fiction, and said, hey, would you want to scream about superhero fan fiction for us? And I was like, they have a werewolf. Yes, absolutely I do. I had to do the werewolf. And besides just the fact that he is a werewolf, this is John Jonah Jameson III. This is J. Jonah's kid. Mm-hmm. He is always fun when he appears in comics. He's always fun when he appears in cartoons. I mean, come on, Spider-Man fighting a werewolf. Like who doesn't want to see Spider-Man fighting a werewolf? It's just fun. And so I wanted to give you guys a good werewolf origin movie, a little bit of homage to Alien. And then also you guys had mentioned that you wanted to build more upon the mysticism of your universe, the magical side of the Spider universe. And that is Man-Wolf. This dude is not a sci-fi werewolf. This dude is firmly, staunchly planted in high fantasy even.
Mhm.
It's wild. And so I was like, yes, absolutely, Man-Wolf. That is the pitch I want to run with. My initial idea, before you guys had introduced Spider-Man to your universe, I was like, what if I did a Clone Saga movie that never mentions Peter Parker? And I had a sort of teen horror drama thing planned, but then you guys introduced Spider-Man, and I was like, no clones, werewolf. And I'm so I got it for you. I thought this boy out, and I'm ready to pitch to you guys my concept for Man-Wolf for your universe.
I'm so excited.
Well, I'm so excited to hear it, quite frankly, because I've been excited for this since we first reached back out to you and got something nailed down. And the moment you said Man-Wolf, I was like, yes. Because, again, mysticism side of Spider-Man, it's pretty... You would think with a rogues gallery with so many, like, goblins, that they would lean more... Like, that they would have more of a magical side. Or magical or just horror or kind of flavor to some of his villains. Not really. I mean, some of them are pretty terrifying, but they're not like outright magical or sorcery or like classic monster kind of vibes, really. They're much more outlandish and animal themed.
Yeah, and even Morbius is he's a sci-fi vampire.
Yeah,
he's not a fantasy vampire. He's a scientist cooked up vampirism in a lab, and it's like, well, get ready because I'm about to shove a magic gem into a man's chest and turn him into a werewolf. So like, yeah,
yes, I'm so ready.
Oh yeah,
go right ahead.
Story Weaver, it is time to weave. All right. When we last saw John Jonah Jameson III, he was an astronaut employed by the Life Foundation. During the opening events of Venom, he was infected by the Riot symbiote. He was quickly abandoned and left for dead. That is the last the audience ever saw of this guy. But lucky for us, he was quickly recovered by another team of paramedics and rushed to the hospital. John did die, but was resuscitated a few minutes after. Sadly, he fell into a coma ever since. It has been an appropriate number of years since then, and John Jonah Jameson Jr., played by Langston Fishburne, actor and son of Lawrence Fishburne. Nepotism for the win, saving me with this one. He opens his eyes, and standing before him is J. Jonah Jameson, played by Lawrence Fishburne. So John has missed a lot over the last few years, including one of J. Jonah's latest marriages, followed shortly by another of J. Jonah's divorces. J. Jonah mentions that, hey, your cousin Maddie stopped by to visit you while you were in the coma. Just a little sprinkle there. And now that John is awake, he begins the grueling task of physical rehabilitation. The doctors say it is unlikely he will ever walk again, but we get a heartfelt montage of him slowly regaining his strength with his dad by his side. Eventually, John is healthy enough to leave the hospital, but after being comatose for so long and the Life Foundation shutting down, John is broke and homeless, so he moves back in with his dad. So we would get a little bit of a comedic montage of these two guys living together, them butting heads, John having a much more militaristic routine and dedication to exercise, trying to get back into peak condition. He can walk again, so he's really not trying to lose a step. And this is clashing with J. Jonah, who is, of course, smoking cigars like it's running out of style and eating junk food, just carryovers from his time as an active field journalist. So these guys are butting heads, but it's obvious no love is lost, and even though these guys have two very different lifestyles, they're very much cut from the same cloth. This is J. Jonah and his son. And eventually John works his way back to physical prime, and we get the obligatory shirtless shot of just absolutely shredded abs in a superhero movie. He's oh my goodness, so ripped. And now that he's back in action, he's going to go out looking for a job. from his career in the military and then for the Life Foundation as an astronaut. He's kind of decently set up. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of interest in space missions anymore. A lot of astronautical programs have been privatized. None really want to hire a guy who had been in a coma for so long and has links to the Life Foundation. Life Foundation has a lot of bad public press. People are like, sorry, man, like it's just a no from us.
That's very fair.
So John is down on his luck. He is depressed. It's looking like he's never going to be able to go to space ever again until he is approached by Norman Osborn. Norman comes up to him and lets him know that after the Life Foundation shut down, a large amount of the assets, including the space mission of the Life Foundation, were purchased in entirety by Oscorp. And Norman is cooking up something special. Oscorp has turned its eyes towards the stars. The symbiotes have earned a lot of attention, and so Norman believes that alien technology, alien life, xenominerals are like the future of where things are headed. And that's why he's looking at the moon. The moon is the world's #1 galactic goalie. The moon intercepts tens of thousands of meteorites every year, and since it has no atmosphere, the small ones don't burn up before impact. So Norman is assembling a lunar crew to man a moon base that they built to go out there and en masse recover meteorites, bring them back to the lab, scan them, determine whether or not they're worth anything, and then bring all the valuable ones back to Earth, the expensive part.
Sick.
Up there, this is the cost of 2 space flights. That you can pay for this thing really easily. He's like, we're not competing with anyone up there. Do you want to go to space? And John is like, I'm going to have to think this over. I want to talk to my dad about it. And he talks to Jonah, and Jonah's like, kid, not only is it a good job, it's an opportunity for you to do some good. Jonah is, of course, frightened by the menace that is Spider-Man and all of these new threats popping up, and Oscorp wants to do something about it and get alien technology or minerals or whatever. Like, yeah, go up there and be the hero that I know you are, son. And hey, if you move out, that means I get to live alone again. And so the men chuckle. They're like, all right, let's do this thing. And so a few weeks later, John heads to the Oscorp Space Center and meets his new gaggle of coworkers. It is several scientists and astronauts, including Paul Stevenson and Dr. Ashley Kafka. We get an astronaut training program montage where John is teaching all of these scientists how to be astronauts, and the scientists are teaching the astronauts how to be better scientists. And of course, John is learning like how technology and stuff has changed. We get the obvious, it's pretty much sci-fi technology with a lot of stuff. So John is learning the differences between the Life Foundation and what Norman's got cooking up now. And so after a nice training montage at this space center, it is time for them to go to the moon. The team all gear up in their new suits. For their in-hab suits and their spacesuits are a mix of gold and green, which is Manwolf's original costume. He was wearing a gold and green spacesuit that he then tore out of. So they're all wearing gold and green spacesuits. That is their uniform for the Oscorp lunar base. And finally, it is launch day. Everyone watches. J. Jonah is there. The spaceship takes off. They get a nice picture for the paper. And John is in space again. And we cut to a few months later. John's days consist of him heading out on a lunar rover, reporting on craters. They have little lunar drones. So just think of like a quadcopter sort of thing, but zero grav, flying around the moon, scanning crash sites and being like, this meteor might be worth something. And one day they get a scan that just doesn't make sense. None of the readings register really as anything, but it reads as anomalous. And so John is sent to recover it. So he drives for about an hour out on this lunar rover. And he kind of freezes when he gets there, because pulsing in the middle of this crater is a glowing red light. John, of course, busts out his Geiger counter. He scans everything. No radiation beyond like the normal cosmic radiation of the moon and all that type of stuff. And he's like, okay. And he hops on down where he finds a perfect red gem. It is about this big. It is an oval. It looks almost hand carved, and it is glowing red. John calls back to the base and asks if they are seeing what he is through his suit's camera, and the team confirm, yes, they are. They urge John to be careful, and John heads back. They get back to the moon base, and everyone starts running tests on it. They've nicknamed it the Moonstone. They don't really know what else to call it. It doesn't look, it's not a ruby. It's not some sort of gemstone that they're familiar with. None of its readings make sense. It doesn't even really give off as having a molecular structure. This thing, by all scientific measures, doesn't exist, but it's physically there. They're holding it, and it's in front of them. They don't get it. Needless to say, this is the jackpot. They let Norman know what they recovered, and Norman orders them to return to Earth ASAP. He wants this thing immediately. So they get to call their 1-year moon mission short by several months. And so the team decide to have a party. They got about a year's worth of rations left, and they're like, let's do this thing. And they throw the wildest party the moon has ever seen, which is incredibly lame, just by definition, still the wildest party ever held on the moon. As the party is roaring, Dr. Kafka, she gets a little flirtatious with John. Maybe it's just been the close proximity all of these months, but she started seeing him a little differently than she did at first. And so she takes the moonstone and she fastens it into a cheap necklace using some materials around, and she puts it on him like a princess bestowing a medal upon a knight, saying, here's to John for being the reason we all get to go home tomorrow. And everyone applauds. They're all having a lovely time. And Paul Stevenson hits play on the boombox, and the song Hungry Like the Wolf by Duran Duran begins to play. And here it is, the mandatory dance sequence in low grav on the moon. We did it. We got there.
Dance sequence.
The party winds down. The crew are all heading to bed. And as John falls asleep, the necklace begins to glow brighter. So it is dark in the lunar base. There is almost no light, but John's chest is pulsing red, brighter and brighter. The camera zooms in on the gem, and the gem phases through the necklace material and into John's upper sternum. It doesn't seem like it's hurting him, but then it pulses, and we see red energy flow through his veins. We notice that the pulsing is in time with a human heartbeat, and the energy flows through his body. One of the astronauts wakes up to get some water, and they notice the eerie red glow coming from John's bunk, and that's when they hear the scream. John bolts upright, begins contorting in pain. The astronaut rushes to John and notices that the gem is embedded in his skin. They call for help. The other astronauts wake up to see what's going on, but John begins howling in pain as his limbs begin to stretch. His hair goes shock white, and when he opens his eyes, they are glowing red. The other astronauts believe he's having a seizure until thick white fur begins spreading all over his body, and those howls of pain turn into the howls of a wolf. The crew stumbles back as John transforms into a nearly 8-foot-tall, white-furred werewolf with a glowing red gem in his chest. He is panting heavily, looking at the floor, but other than that, he's not moving. Dr. Kafka slowly takes a step towards him and asks, John? And at that point, John's head snaps up, his eyes glowing onto the crewmates, and he begins to snarl and slowly approach them. He gets closer and closer, the closest to Kafka now. He smells her, but then rears back to swipe before he is shot in the chest with a laser rifle by Paul Stevenson. The rifle burns the skin, but we see as the skin instantly begins to regenerate, and John snaps his head towards Paul and leaps at him. The astronauts begin running for their lives, trapped in a moon base with a werewolf. In a sequence absolutely inspired by Alien, the crew are running and hiding from this bloodthirsty monster, and it is slowly but surely catching them and eating them. We do not mess around. This is a not pretty sight, as this werewolf is tearing some of these scientists apart. Eventually, he kills everyone except Paul and Dr. Kafka. They are the two survivors. They corner him. They set a trap. They lure the wolf towards the airlock of the moon base. And as he leaps at Kafka, who is acting as the bait, she ducks down and John hits the switch, sealing the airlock shut, trapping the wolf in the airlock of the moon base. And very sadly, they call back to Oscorp and they report what's happened. It is night on Earth. We see Norman waking up to see what's going on. He brings up security feed live from Moonbase and they replay what was happening. And Norman, while everyone else is reacting in horror, Norman grins. He pushes the scientist working the comms off the microphone and he orders Paul to bring the wolf back. Paul is seemingly unwilling to do this, but then there's a loud thud. And Paul and Dr. Kafka turn towards the airlock door, which thuds again. They activate the airlock and flush John out into the vacuum of space, where he will hopefully suffocate and die. But he does not. This wolf does not seem like it needs to breathe. It clings to the lunar surface, crawls back, and begins punching at the airlock door from the vacuum of space. And eventually its head cocks. It points its arm like a point. It jams its claws into the lock of the airlock, and it physically tears the airlock door from its hinges, the air starting to rush from the moon base. Dr. Kafka and Stevenson put on their lunar suits as fast as they can, as that door is ripped from the base, and the wolf crawls back in. Back on Earth, Norman sees this and now begins to panic, as his investment is about to be ruined. He screams at all of the team inside that they are moving up the return launch to right now. He orders John and Kafka to do everything he says. Back up on the moon, we see Paul grab his laser rifle, and sadly he has to sneak up, press it against John's head, and fires right through the head, blowing a hole through the werewolf's head. The werewolf collapses dead. They are horrified. Kafka is crying. Paul is just in shock that he had to kill a man.
Oh, man.
But then the moonstone pulses again, and we see as the brain tissue inside his head starts stitching itself back together.
Oh my gosh.
And they realize they got to move pretty fast. They scoop up the corpse of this werewolf and they throw it into the transport container with all of the other precious metals that they had recovered. They get into the shuttle and Norman launches it himself from headquarters, and the two survivors fly back to Earth, clearly traumatized by what's happening. As they enter Earth's atmosphere, they hear a thud. They check on the container and they hear another thud, and this time they see the indent of a fist coming from inside the container. John has woken up and he is not happy. Lucky for them, this chamber is significantly beefier than the moon station itself, as this was designed for re-entry. In case a shuttle should explode upon re-entry, this thing was designed to survive that. Unluckily, John seems to be doing a pretty good job at punching his way out of it. And because this thing is so strong, all of John's punches are actually setting the ship off course as it's trying to re-enter the atmosphere. He is putting in so much force, it's messing with re-entry. The shuttle is on autopilot, but it's having trouble compensating for the random fury of a trapped werewolf.
Oh my goodness.
Dr. Kafka and Paul try to right the shuttle, but neither of them are trained for this because that was specifically John's job, and he's the one trapped in the back. So the shuttle careens off course and heads directly towards downtown New York, where we cut to the Daily Planet, and we see Peter Parker being berated by J. Jonah Jameson about his recent subpar photos. But Pete's spidey senses go off. He looks out the opposite window over Jonah's shoulder, and he sees a burning projectile heading through the atmosphere, heading to downtown New York. So Peter excuses himself, suits up, and swings out, as Jonah turns back around with an exasperated sigh, but then his eyes lock on the shuttle coming towards too, and the freshly lit cigar falls from his mouth. Back with the shuttle, Kafka and Paul are trying to straighten themselves out, but it is not working, and it is looking like they are not going to make it. But hey, in swings Spider-Man. Spidey swings up, latches onto the shuttle, and fires off many web parachutes, slowing it down, and with several more thwips, he stops the shuttle entirely. He rips the shuttle door off and helps the astronauts out, but they scream at him that they need to run, and the astronauts bolt off down the street. Spider-Man is confused, but his spidey senses kick in just in time to avoid shrapnel from a werewolf ripping its way out of a container. Spidey's eyes go wide as he is standing face to face with a werewolf. And so we get a Spider-Man werewolf fight in the middle of New York at nighttime. The werewolf is clearly stronger than Spider-Man, but Spider-Man is quicker, he has reflexes, he has intelligence, and he has gadgets. So Spidey wins this fight, wrapping the wolf up like a present and suspending him off of the ground, just in time for all of the news crews to show up. Spider-Man defeats Man-Wolf is the story the city is buzzing about. But J. Jonah Jameson shows up to the scene. He does not care about the werewolf. He cares about the Oscorp shuttle returning from the moon. He runs up to Paul and Kafka and he asks, "Where is my son?" And he gets his answer as Kafka sadly looks towards the suspended man-wolf that lets out a bone-chilling howl above the streets of New York. We then cut to a small cottage in the English countryside. It is dilapidated and in a complete state of disrepair. And we then see a disheveled man watching the TV. He is pouring slops of dog food into disgusting-looking bowls and dropping them at cages to his feet. As the news comes on and the broadcaster states, and in international news today, an American werewolf in New York. The man sits upright. He turns the volume up, and as the report shows the beast fighting Spider-Man, the feats of strength and the ferocity elicit an impressed whistle from this strange man. He looks over his shoulder, and he says, "You see that, boys and girls? Looks like you're all about to get a new brother." And the camera pans, revealing the inhabitants of these cages, 3 men and 2 women. They are filthy, they are wearing scraps of clothing, and they have thick iron collars with intricately carved runes on them. They don't respond to this man's words, and they are instead eating the slop from their respective bowls. End of Act 1.
Oh my goodness, man.
The strange man is played by Aidan Gillen of Game of Thrones fame, Littlefinger from Game of Thrones. He is my villain for this tale.
Sweet.
Okay, yes. Ooh.
Yeah, so that's the end of
This
Act.
is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. The Spider-Man catching the shuttle is actually a more or less a recreation of John's first appearance in Spider-Man comics.
Mm-hmm.
His space shuttle is crashing into New York City, and Spider-Man catches it and slows it down with web parachutes and saves the day. And then J. Jonah Jameson writes a story about it, saying that Spider-Man was probably the one that tried crashing the shuttle, and this was all just a fool to make us think that Spider-Man was a hero, when actually John, the astronaut's the real hero.
The white fur is very striking. I know that was the original design with like bright white fur and a green and yellow suit. It's very, it's not at all what you think when you think a werewolf.
I always think of gray fur, yeah.
Yes.
And wolf, yeah.
Yeah, I'm keeping that the bright white fur. Even in the comics, Man-Wolf has turned more or less in sort of a gray in a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. I think, though, that might just be a coloring issue, like with Spider-Man's black and red versus black and blue suit. I think a lot of people are trying to shade white, and so in a lot of colorations, it just looks like he's a gray werewolf.
Yeah.
But then there are these sometimes beautiful splash pages where he's still a beautiful big old white werewolf, and I'm like, I got to stick with that.
That is such a cool image. Like, you have a lot of cool imagery in here, and I really like. We have had J. Jonah Jameson in several of our pitches recently, starting with the Ben Parker follows the White Rabbit. Mm-hmm. The silliest thing I've written up until Peter and Prowler, but. We haven't really dealt with the personal life of J. Jonah Jameson, and I think, he has a bit of his personal life explored in Spider-Man 3 in the, Raimi trilogy and whatnot, with John returning to Earth and trying to marry MJ.
Yes.
But that's like the furthest extent that we get, and I really enjoy. I can picture in my mind the sort of montage with John and Triple J. This is really cool, man. This is really awesome.
Hey, I thought I love J. Jonah Jameson as a character, and I thought it'd be really fun to bring him in more as a nice supporting character in the movie about his son. The Jameson family sprawls through Spider-Man mythology in such a huge way, up into including Maddie, the cousin, who is J. Jonah Jameson's younger sister's daughter. It's absolutely wild that the connections they get to. And there was a time, I believe J. Jonah and Aunt May were engaged at one point in continuity. There's been so much stuff. It was either that or I think it was.
It's his like grandfather, or it's his father.
Oh no, yes, it's his dad. His dad is marrying Aunt May.
Yeah, because there was
J.
this
Jonah
whole
Jameson
thing
the
where,
first.
there was this whole thing where Peter and J. Jonah Jameson, they were like they were cousins, like essentially, and there was this whole sort of bond thing during that. I cannot remember when that was happening. It had to have been either before or after Superior Spider-Man.
I think it was before Superior Spider-Man. Because I think that was all... When Peter returned, I don't think any of that stuff popped back up.
I don't think so.
And I don't think Otto was dealing with any of the fallout from it. But
I think it was either right before or maybe there was a little bit of intersection, but if they did, it wasn't much.
Yeah.
I have an idea for our director if you don't already.
I do not. I have I just have the fan castings for some characters. Oh, and of course fan casting for Dr. Kafka and for Paul Stevenson. That's pretty much a wrap on Paul for the movie. And so because I didn't really use him anymore, I wanted to cast Justin Long, inspired by Weapons, where he just appeared. If you guys have seen Weapons, he is just one of the dads, and he's there for about 30 seconds, and then that's it. And so I was unable to get that out of my head. So I was like, so he's Paul Stevenson. He's astronaut Paul Stevenson, who is from the comics and from the cartoons. He was just the other astronaut in the pod with J. Jonah when stuff was going down. So I threw him here. And then Dr. Ashley Kafka will be played by DeWanda Weiss, who people might recognize from Jurassic World Dominion. I thought this would be a fun group, and that's the full fan casting for any new people showing up in this tale.
That's awesome.
I'm looking everybody up to make sure that I have their faces in my head.
Yes.
Sort of to bring this all full circle. How do you? Well, I suppose his more recent filmography isn't quite up to snuff, and it's been few and far between. How do you feel about Stephen Sommers?
Off the top of my head, I don't recognize the name. What's
the director of The Mummy and Van Helsing?
1,000,000% yes. 1,000,000% absolutely yes, please, thank you. Yes, 100 yes, 1,000% yes, absolutely. Give him werewolves again. And also because this is the lovely fanfiction universe, I can announce here the lovely team behind Dawn of Planet of the Apes and War for Planet of the Apes and Kingdom of Planet of the Apes at Weighted Digital. They have agreed to personally come on and make these werewolves to my specifications. So don't worry, we're getting the most we're getting the most photorealistic werewolf with the Van Helsing monster design you've ever seen.
We cannot have Sony CG this late in the game. We can't. It just simply cannot be.
It is gonna. I want to blow everyone's minds with these werewolves. I want these wolves on screen, and I want people being like, "How is this happening? That's a wolf." And I'm like, "Yes, it is. We did it. We nailed it this time. We got you." And shall I jump into Act 2?
Please
for
do.
you? All right. It is a couple days later, and John wakes up confused. We see that he is totally fine. He's wearing medical scrubs, but as he stands up and the camera pans around, it reveals that he is being held in a large glass container. Think Hulk's prison cell from the Avengers. And he looks down at his chest and he sees the moonstone embedded in it. He tries to grab it or rip it out of his chest, but he can't get a grip on it. It is just in there. And he calls out for help because he does not know what is going on. He has no memory of the last 72 hours. He fell asleep on the moon. He woke up here. Norman Osborn walks in with a team of scientists with Dr. Kafka included, and Norman explains to John everything that happens. John refuses to believe this, but Norman plays back the security footage from the moon base. And John just collapses to the ground in disbelief as to what happened. That's a lot to grapple with. You turned into a werewolf, and then you killed all of those people you'd been living with for months. They were innocent, good people. John feels terrible. Norman points to John's chest. He explains that the precious metals that they managed to get back more than paid for the mission. But now they had things to replace. A moon base to repair, damage from a shuttle crash, and 3 goddamn life insurance policies. So the whole thing is a wash. Except for that gem. Norman's scientists tell him that the gem shouldn't exist, but it does, which means that it's a lot more than meets the eye, and possibly can do even more than they've already seen it do. So Norman tells them that he is going to be here for a long, long time. And John looks for a moment, maybe he wants to resist, but then he remembers the footage of what he did to everyone, and he thinks that it is for the best that he live out the rest of his days down here in this cell. He is scared of himself. And later that night, while John is sitting alone in the cell, we see a figure behind him, and he turns and sees Dr. Kafka. She has come there to apologize. She feels guilty because she is the one who put the necklace on him, so she views that entire massacre and what has happened to him as her fault. But John reassures her that is absolutely not the case. No one could have predicted that. Like, none of the readings on the gem made it look like anything crazy was going to happen. No one would have thought werewolf massacre. She needs to forgive herself a little bit for that. This is John's fault. He's the one who actually did everything. Kafka asks how he feels, if he's in control, and John explains that he does feel in control, and worse, he doesn't remember anything that happened. He saw the footage, and Kafka tells him that he's going to be okay and that they'll get through this together. And John asks, together? And Kafka shows her badge. She is the head doctor in charge of researching the Moonstone.
Ooh.
And so she says goodbye to John. And as she's leaving, John says goodbye, and that her perfume smells nice, which causes Kafka to freeze, because John should not be able to smell anything from within that cell. We slam cut. John is running on a treadmill. He has all sorts of tubes and wires hooked up to him, and he is running abnormally fast, as Dr. Kafka is narrating. Outside of wolf form, subject still exhibits enhanced senses and abilities well over an average human. Subject can run nearly 40 miles per hour in sustained bursts. We cut to John lifting weights. We see he's putting up impressive but not impossible numbers. During the moon base and re-entry incidents, subject's wolf form exhibited strength levels exceeding 10 tons of force. Subject's human form is also enhanced, and we see that she glances briefly at his bicep as he's curling about 200 pounds. We cut to John navigating a maze while blindfolded. Subject's smell and hearing is on par with a German shepherd's. We then cut and see John in a dim room with purple lights. Kafka says subject exhibits no signs of change while under simulated moonlight. All attempts to study the Moonstone are still ineffective. We may have to accept the reality that what we are dealing with here is just something outside of our understanding. And we then cut outside, and we see Aidan Gillen, the disheveled man from before, walking through the New York City streets. He is holding an odd-looking compass in his hands as he follows where it leads, and it brings him right outside Oscorp's R&D tower. He tries to walk inside, but is immediately stopped by security, and he just feigns ignorance, playing the part of a confused tourist, does a 180, walks a little bit down the street, and takes a dip into an alley. He looks around the side of the building, and he sees a vent towards the ground, and he grins. He then looks down the alley, and he sees a rat eating a slice of pizza. The man begins approaching the rat and chanting, as his eyes begin to glow purple. The rat slowly turns towards him and stands up, sniffing at him, before the rat's eyes glow as well. The man reaches towards the rat, touches his index finger to its head, and he collapses on the ground. And the camera then focuses on the rat, whose eyes are still glowing purple, and it snaps to attention with a seemingly human level of intelligence. It turns towards the vent, wiggles through, and begins navigating the building. We follow the rat as it navigates the maze, eventually coming to an elevator shaft and scrambling down the sides, heading towards the lab where John is being held. Down in the lab, John is hooked up to a sort of MRI machine, getting a scan as he and Kafka talk. Kafka is looking at the gem. and it is still impossible to read. She's realized that she can essentially read the information around it and deduce what the gem can do based off of the stuff she can't see. Sort of like looking at the silhouette of data. But she's still just not really getting anything. It just appears to be a stone. But what this MRI is doing is showing that whatever the stone is, it kind of has tendrils spreading throughout his body. They don't appear to be physical, but they're definitely going all throughout his nervous system. She lets him know, whatever this thing is, it is embedded thoroughly throughout your nervous system. But instead of feeding off of you, it's feeding you. John asks nervously, like a symbiote? And Kafka replies, lowercase s symbiote, but yes. The data we have on file for the Life Foundation is nothing like what we're reading here, or rather, not reading here. This thing is in a symbiotic relationship with you, but it is not a life form. It's more like a battery. And John asks, if it's a battery, where is it getting its charge from? And she wonders the exact same thing. The camera then begins focusing over Kafka's shoulder and on a blur on the wall, and as it zooms and focuses, we see that it's the rat watching everything they say. The camera moves, but the discussion between John and Kafka is muffled as we approach the rat, seeing that the rat actually cannot hear the conversation. He's just seeing what's going on. The rat turns back around, heads back up the vents out to the alley, and taps the disheveled man, who lurches back up into consciousness. He leaps up, dusts himself off, and pulls out an intricately carved pocket watch. But when we look at it, we see that instead of hours in the day, it has phases of the moon. He looks down, and he sees that the next full moon symbol is on the bottom of the clock, indicating that it is about 2 weeks away. He smiles and heads out. And as he exits the alley, he bumps into someone. J. Jonah Jameson. He excuses himself and heads down the street, and we begin following Jonah. Jonah barely registers the man he just bumped into, and we see that he is on the phone, and he says, "You're sure he's in there? Your sources are good?" And we hear the voice of Peter Parker on the line, assuring him, "Yes, Mr. Jameson, I promise you, that is where they're holding your son." Jonah doesn't even thank Peter, just hangs up and walks inside the building and shouts out, "Where is my son?" Oscorp security rushes him, but Jonah pushes them back, making a big scene of everything. He's an experienced journalist. He knows the only way to get a big company to do what you want it to do is by making a big old public scene with as many witnesses as possible. The guards try to calm him down, and we see the front desk worker receive a call. They answer it, and they ask, "Are you sure?" "Okay, sir. Yes, I'll tell him." And they turn towards Jonah and say, "Mr. Osborn would like to speak with you." Jonah grins in victory and is escorted to the elevators. The security guards scan their badges and bring Jonah up to the top floor penthouse of the Oscorp building. They exit the elevator and find Norman Osborn in the middle of working on his putting game. "Jonah, you golf, don't you?" Norman asks, gesturing at the game. Jonah reaches into his pocket, pulling out his phone, and begins an audio recording saying, "Cut the shit, Osborn. You have my son, and I want to see him." And Norman grins. "For your own safety, I can't let you down there." "For my safety? He's my son, Norman. Are you saying Oscorp can't contain a werewolf? You could afford the gold golf clubs, but you spare the cost on silver, huh?" This causes Norman to miss his putt, the golden head of his putter glimmering in the sun. We see his forehead vein bulge. Norman pulls out his phone, and after a few clicks, we hear something coming from the large wall screen in his living room. Jonah turns in horror to see that it is the security footage from the moon base of John killing his teammates. "One of my men put a round through his skull, and it regenerated within the hour. He tore through a shuttle designed for re-entry with his bare hands. We don't know what's happening to him down there, or what seeing a family member after nearly a year will do to him. So yes, Jonah, this is for your safety and everyone else's." Norman realigns himself and hits another putt, sinking this one this time. And we see Jonah begins to cry. He's looking at the monstrous things that his son is capable of, and Jonah stops the audio recording on his phone. He says, "Okay, Osborn, off the record. Please. I just want to know that he's okay." Norman lines up another putt, and Jonah asks, "You have a son, don't you?" This causes Norman to miss the putt again. Norman is gripping his putter. Clearly, the son subject is a sore one for him. "If our roles were reversed and your son was down there, wouldn't you want to see him?" Norman looks livid, but exhales and says, "More than you know." Norman steps over to an intercom and hits it and says, "Dr. Kafka, John will be receiving a visitor. Please have him ready soon." And Norman gestures and sends Jonah back to the elevator and nods to his men. And back down in the lab, John puts his shirt back on, and his father exits the elevator. The two men rush up to each other and greet each other through the glass. They are checking in with each other, and this is a typically emotionally closed-off talk between a father and a son. There's clearly a lot of emotion there, but neither of them are really speaking to it. Jonah asks his son how he's doing, and John tells him that he's fine. Jonah asks what happened up there, and that causes John to sit down dejectedly. And he explains everything about the gem, not remembering, and then all the stuff down here. Jonah looks around at the lab, at all of the machinery, all of the equipment, and he asks, how long are they going to keep you down here? And John tells his dad, as long as it takes. So far, John is being kept there voluntarily. He saw the footage of what he did. He doesn't want to endanger others. And Jonah reassures his son, telling him the monster did those horrible things. That wasn't you. The man inside the wolf is still a good one. John and Jonah have to say their goodbyes, and Jonah leaves feeling reassured. Jonah approaches Dr. Kafka on his way out and asks her how long she thinks John will have to stay down here, and she responds saying that it truly all depends on what happens on the next full moon. She looks at her calendar, and we see that the moon is 2 weeks away, and the scene fades, staying on that calendar, which is now circling the day of the full moon. Back with John, he's once again hooked up to a bunch of machinery being measured, and he is lifting weights again, but this time he's lifting thousands of pounds, not hundreds of pounds. They note that the closer to the full moon it gets, the closer to wolf strength the subject appears to exhibit. And we see that the Oscorp guards are equipping themselves with large weapons, things that make the laser rifle that Paul used on the moon look like a toy. Kafka asks John how he's feeling, and John says that he truly feels better now than he has ever in his life. And he sets down the 1,000-pound weights, and we see John begin to worry. The weights hit the ground with a booming thud, and he asks, "Are you guys sure you'll be able to contain me?" And even Dr. Kafka expresses her own doubts. But she reminds him, hey, if it all goes wrong, we can just shoot you in the head and restrain you as you regenerate again. John laughs at the joke before realizing Kafka is 100% completely serious. John looks at the clock in the lab and asks what the plan is. Kafka calmly explains in a few minutes, they will move the chamber. They have a freight elevator in the back of the lab, and they're going to bring it up to the helipad and expose him to direct moonlight. John is looking nervous, but Kafka assures him that things will be fine. And then we cut outside the building, and we see the druid. And the camera focuses on a truck behind him. He throws open the truck, and we see he has brought 3 of the filthy people in cages from before. He says, "All right, boys and girl, you're up." He throws open the cages, and 2 of the prisoners tentatively crawl out, but 1 does not. Druid kicks the cage and says, "Out." But the person cowers in the corner, crying. Druid growls in frustration and grabs a walking cane from the corner of the truck. We see that its edge and handle are tipped in silver. He presses the end of the cane against the prisoner's skin, and it begins to burn. The prisoner screams in pain, and the druid yells again, "Out!" And the prisoner crawls out, joining the other 2. They all stand at the edge of the truck, looking down at the light reflecting against the damp alley ground. The druid approaches them from behind, seeing that they are all hesitant to leap outside and into the moonlight. He rolls his eyes and shoves them out of the truck. They fall to the ground, and they all begin to convulse. And we watch as all 3 of them shapeshift into powerful, 7-foot-tall walls of rage werewolves. They are a myriad of colors. We got a gray one, we got a black one, we got a brown one, more or less mirroring the hair that the people had before they were shoved in. The wolves begin looking around in a violent rage, but then the iron collars around their necks begin to glow, and we see that the druid is chanting. As he speaks, the wolves all calm down, their eyes glazing over, and eventually they calmly sit before the man. He steps past them, and they follow like expertly trained dogs, and we see that they are just outside Oscorp. The druid grins and says, "Fetch." The wolves sprint across the street and leap through the Oscorp front doors, shattering the glass. The night staff begin to panic. The security guards all pull out large guns from locked emergency cabinets and begin firing at the wolves, but these bullets barely faze these creatures. These wolves rip and tear their way through the security, ripping the elevator door off its hinges and leaping down the shaft to the underground laboratory. Back down in the lab goes on complete lockdown, large security shields closing all of the windows and doors. The security guards inside the lab pull out their large laser weapons, and they take position to guard Dr. Kafka. And they hear a werewolf massacre coming from the other side of the shields. We see that John's cell is already on the move to the freight elevator, and John is banging on the glass, asking what is going on. Kafka brings up the security feed from outside, and we see the 3 werewolves attempting to get into the lab. The wolves begin pounding on the security doors, and we see dents begin to form. And as one of the dents in particular begins to grow and grow, one of the security guards inside the lab panics and lets out a burst of laser fire from his rifle. It burns through the dent, and we hear a pained yelp. Everyone in the lab stares at the hole, and suddenly, raising up from the ground is the hit wolf. We see it got hit in the shoulder, and the shoulder begins rapidly healing over. And then the other 2 wolves close in, peeking through the new hole in the wall. The wolves all reach forward and begin shredding the metal from the new weakness in the wall. The guards open fire on the wolves, but these wolves heal as fast as the blasts can knock holes in them. John yells for Dr. Kafka to run while she can, and she insists that she will not leave him behind. But he reminds her that he will be fine. She needs to run. And as he says that, the hole in the door is now big enough that one of the wolves scrambles through and pounces on one of the security guards, and the other 2 wolves begin scrambling in after. Seeing that, Kafka screams, and she gets the other guard to follow her. He lays down covering fire, and the 2 of them make for the freight elevator and take it up to the helipad to safety. As the elevator doors close, one of the wolves pounces at it, denting the metal. The wolf shakes its head and then turns around. One wolf is still eating the deceased guard, and it looks up from its meal, and the other wolf stares at John, and all 3 begin to circle his cell. John spins around, looking at all of them. He's worried, but he is screaming at them to bring it on. And then one of the wolves begins to fidget. We see its eyes begin to glow purple like the rat from before. And then the wolf stands up straighter, fixing its posture, more intelligent looking. John looks at it and asks, "Are you the leader of this pack?" The wolf looks at him for a moment, looking him up and down, and then it begins to inspect the cell, its eyes circling before locking in on the top of it, and we see that that is where the door to this chamber is. And all 3 wolves leap on top of the cell. John stares at the ceiling as he hears the sounds of metal being shredded, and the 3 wolves have to work together, but doing so, they successfully tear through the ceiling and drop into the cell with John, and a fight begins. The glass of this cell is nearly indestructible, so this is a werewolf MMA match. John's enhanced strength is helping him duck and weave between the wolves' swipes as he is slamming them into the glass and using them as weapons against each other. And eventually John leaps out the top of the cell, and the fight moves into the lab. The wolves are leaping from wall to wall, but he is delivering more brutal hits. But the entire time they're attacking him, they're not going for lethal damage. And eventually the wolves manage to pin him down and knock him out. 2 of them grab him by the ankles and begin dragging him behind them back up the elevator shaft to the lobby. The druid backs his truck up to the lobby, and John is thrown in. The wolves hop in, and the truck peels away just as the NYPD shows up as the end of Act 2.
Okay.
Werewolf
This is awesome.
This is so awesome.
Why isn't this real?
I just want to see werewolves fight each other. And that is still John, for clarification, hopefully, John was not in wolf form in that. He still had not been outside, so that was just enhanced strength human John versus 3 werewolves. And it was a decently close fight.
That's such a close visual. Cool visual.
I've dialed up all of Man-Wolf's powers in this because they are inconsistent even within the comics. The official Marvel Power Scale ratings that they post for stuff has him weaker and slower and less durable than Spider-Man. But the problem is when he fights Spider-Man, that's clearly the exact opposite of what's going on. He's clearly stronger and faster and more durable than Spider-Man. And the reason Spider-Man wins is because Spider-Man has spidey senses and technology and intelligence and can outthink the dumb thing that he's fighting. So I have dialed him up to just above Spider-Man levels of strength, and I have turned his healing factor into Wolverine level healing.
Sweet.
He does have a healing factor in the comics, but it's wildly inconsistent between riders and runs, and it can be like he gets the gem ripped out of his chest in the comics almost every single time he appears, and then that thing just closes up. So I'm like, you get Wolverine healing. When you're a werewolf, you get Wolverine. When it's the full moon and you're a wolf, you can do crazy stuff. And then other than that, you get a little boost, teeny boost.
It's interesting that in this pitch, at least with the druid, there's this sort of clash between Man-Wolf, who originates in space, which is very like kind of pretty much more when I think of space, I think of sci-fi and technology and whatnot. And then the druid has runes. He has all these different things. And these werewolves are of I can only assume of Earth. Yep. I'm sure that we'll see in Act 3. And so it's like sort of sci-fi versus fantasy clashing against one another in this pitch. This is really cool, man.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed this. Why isn't this real?
Thank you. I had a lot of fun with this, and now comes the big exposition portion in Act 3, where things have to start being explained because it's a superhero origin film, and what is going on.
What I have always enjoyed, because I've followed your TikTok and your YouTube for a little while now, and you have a really great eye for little moments between characters that can feel foreboding or just like unsettling in the right context. And the scene where he can smell Kafka's perfume even though he's like in a thick padded cell, and she's like, it's like, ooh. That's ominous.
So neat.
It's
little moments.
It's just a
like
fun
that
little,
that
like, you know, in any other,
bring it over the edge.
Put any other prisoner in any other cell, have that say that to any other doctor. You're just like, oh yeah, of course. But like, this guy is in an absolutely airlocked, tight cell. Mm-hmm. He might be a biohazard. They don't know what's going on. And he's like, oh, it's like, also you smell nice. And she's like, excuse me?
And the conversation between Norman and Jonah. Oh, it's so good.
Mm-hmm. I don't believe Harry has been even alluded to yet in anything. Mm-hmm. So please forgive me if I absolutely overstepped. I wanted to throw in one little thing. I was like, Jonah wants to get what he wants. He is gonna hit that thing of like, he knows Norman has a kid. He's gonna try to be like, dad. And so I was like, I don't know what relationship these guys are cooking up for Harry. I don't know what. So like that scene is rewrite it as much as y'all want, but just in case, I was like, there you go. Norman got mad that button got pushed, but relented.
It's such a good scene. Just the little vein bulge, and Glenn Howerton doing that.
Yes.
Is also just simmering, just boiling rage underneath and insanity.
Exactly. I was like, I know that vein bulge. I've seen Dennis Reynolds do that vein bulge so many times. I was like, I want that vein bulge of just missing the putt. And I'm just like, you did not just say that. I wanted that. And I was like, I know what that man can do. Give me the vein. Give me the vein.
Give me the vein.
All right, shall we dive into the final act? Bring this guy home. All right. John comes to in a dingy warehouse in Upper New York. He is chained to a table with an iron collar around his neck, just like the other wolves. He looks around the room. He sees prisoners in human form in their cages. He tries to rip himself free of his restraints, but the chains pulse with a similar magic as the collar, and John is trapped. John tries to plead with the prisoners to get any information with them, but they remain completely silent, except for the one who refused to get out of the cage earlier. He speaks up, and he says that they have to stay quiet or else the master will be angry. They hear the sound of a door opening, and the prisoners shrink back away to the corners of their cells, and John looks towards the source of the noise, and the druid walks in carrying a big bag full of dog food. And he says, well, good morning, big fella. He begins scooping dog food into the bowls for the prisoners, and John asks, who are you, and where am I? And the druid just laughs, saying, oh, this is your new home, and these are your new brothers and sisters. The prisoners begin ravenously devouring the dog food that he has served them, and the druid turns to John approaching the table. John asks the druid, where did these wolves come from? How many are there? And druid happily responds, boasting about his past hunts. Well, that one I got from Italy, those two from Ireland, that one from Africa, and that one from Russia. But there are hundreds, maybe thousands of wolves out there. And my goal is to kill each and every one of them. See, now these things are powerful, but sometimes it is best to fight fire with fire. I caught your fight with Spider-Man on the news, and you look a mite bit bigger than the ones I got on hand right now. Maybe because you were on the moon itself, huh? Who knows? We'll test that out tonight. I'll take the white wolf for a spin myself, see what you're really capable of. And John asks the druid what he means by that. And the druid shows off his magics. He says, my family were druids, magicians. We can shape and control the natural world. Now, normally, men can't be controlled with druidic magic. But werewolves are anything but normal. When you all change, your mind is bestial, primal, malleable. I'll break you down, and you will be a good dog for me soon enough. But first, I have questions, like, how did a werewolf get to the moon? And we cut to Oscorp. As the place is being cleaned up and investigated by the police, J. Jonah Jameson shows up and pushes himself inside, flashing his press badge, and asks what happened. The surviving guards all look traumatized at what they saw, and are mostly mumbling and babbling about claws and fur. Jonah is exhausted, but he spots Dr. Kafka being spoken to by some medical workers, and he runs up to her. He recognized her from the lab and asks what happened to his son, and she tells him that she does not know, but that John saved her life. Jonah asks if John did all of this, and Kafka tells him no, other wolves did, and they took him alive. Jonah is relieved to hear about that, but then immediately worried by why his son was taken by other werewolves. He asks Norman what is his plan for recovering his son, and Kafka is about to respond, but Norman cuts her off and says, no comment, Mr. Jameson. Oscorp security has it handled. Jonah tries appealing to Norman's humanity again, but this time Norman flat out refuses, saying that the situation has changed. As Norman heads out, Kafka grabs Jonah and tells him that she can help him find John, but they have to go right now. Kafka heads down to her lab and grabs something and comes back up and heads out with Jonah. We see that what she grabbed is more or less a high-tech sort of Geiger counter. She begins playing with it, explaining to Jonah that she can't really read the energy of the thing that's inside John's chest, but again, she can read the absence of energy around it. So using that, she thinks she'll be able to use that to track John down. And so, Jonah and Dr. Kafka team up to go find John. We cut back to John, and the druid is still trying to get him to spill the beans about what happened on the moon, but John is refusing to talk. And the druid warns him that if he doesn't cooperate, he can make things very painful. And he pulls out his silver cane. He steps towards John and presses it into his skin. The prisoners all wince in empathy, but nothing happens. We cut back, and the druid's eyes go wide as the silver does not burn the skin of the lycanthrope in front of him. And he says, that's impossible. He presses it again. He tries again and again in absolute disbelief, and his eyes go wide, and he begins laughing. A werewolf from the moon! Of course. In a flash, the druid pulls the handle from the cane, revealing that it is in fact a silver sword inside of the cane. And in a slash, he perfectly cuts John's shirt open, revealing the moonstone embedded in his chest. The druid is frozen, and a wicked grin spreads across his face. He clasps his hand to his face and begins crying tears of joy. "Oh, Johnny, you have no idea how happy you have made me." He approaches, staring at the gem. He says, "You want to know where werewolves come from?" And he points at the gem. "The Godstone. The treasure of a risen Turk. Legends say that he was a sorcerer from another realm, and all he brought from his home was that stone. And when the moon was full and the connection to his home realm was at its strongest, he could take the form of his god." Turk was a lunatic. He tried to conquer mankind, but when humanity fought back, he bit one of them. And that's all it took. One bite, and a curse spread around the world like wildfire. And now you have brought me the answer. John looks at the druid almost hopefully, asking, "Could you use this to cure me?" And the druid laughs, saying, "No, there's no cure, only extinction." And the druid begins trying to rip the gem out of John's chest.
Oh my gosh.
Back with Jonah and Kafka, they are following the trail. They pull up outside the druid's lair. They are there. And we see Jonah pull out a gun. Kafka looks at him shocked and says, "You have a gun?" And Jonah says, "I grew up in New York. Of course I do." And Kafka laughs as she reaches into her coat and pulls out a gun of her own and says, "Greatest city in the world." And the two of them smile and they head towards the warehouse. Jonah asks her what the plan is, and Kafka looks up at the sky. The sun is setting and the full moon shines bright. And she says, "Well, whatever we do not have much time." We cut back to Oscorp and see that Norman has also figured out how to track the Moonstone's lack of energy, and he has a team of soldiers gearing up. The mission leader lets Norman know the operation should go quickly, and Norman tells them, "Do not mess this up. Bring me that gem." Back at the lair, Kafka and Jonah are sneaking their way to the warehouse. They peek inside a window, and they see John being tortured by the druid. He is still trying to carve that gem out of the man's chest, but the man's chest is healing faster than the druid can do damage to it. That gem is in there. John is begging the druid to stop, but the druid says, "No, the werewolves killed my family. When I was a kid, my parents thought that druidic magic could maybe let werewolves and humanity coexist. But the wolves tore them apart, and they would have killed me too if I hadn't been found by hunters. They found me. They taught me how to kill werewolves. And all they wanted in return was for me to let them know if I ever found this." And he tries to rip it out of John's chest again, still not successfully doing so. Jonah and Kafka try to sneak into the door as quietly as they can, but as soon as the door creaks open, we see one of the prisoners' heads bolt up. They sniff the air, prompting all of the others to dart their heads in the same direction, sniffing. And then John picks up the scent. His eyes dart towards that direction, and the prisoner who first noticed yells out, "Intruders!" The druid turns around and spots Kafka and Jonah. They aim their guns at the druid, and they try to get him to surrender. But druid just flicks his wrists, and we see the cages to the prisoners magically open. The prisoners climb out and glare at the intruders, and druid says, "Kill them." The prisoners leap at the intruders. Kafka and Jonah run from these feral people whose strength is enhanced outside of their wolf form. However, we notice that they are significantly weaker than what we saw John capable of. Jonah and Kafka both end up cornered and try to shoot their respective pursuers, but the bullets barely faze these prisoners. John keeps trying to escape his chains, but he is unable to break the magically enhanced restraints. But as he is struggling, we see the hesitant prisoner from the before, the one who didn't want to leave the cage, the one who spoke to John earlier. He looks at the fellow prisoners about to attack. He looks at the druid who is staring at the scene with glee, and he hears the desperation in John's cries. and so the prisoner runs across the room to a large chain hanging from the ceiling. The druid turns and sees this too late and yells out, "No," and the prisoner pulls the chain, opening a skylight, exposing John to the light of the full moon. And John's body stretches and grows, and we see as he swells into his wolf form, the links of the chains shatter, and they fall to the ground. The druid takes a step back and tries to talk the wolf down. The other prisoners all immediately turn around and face John out of fear. And right now, all of the eyes are on the man-wolf in the center of the warehouse. The druid summons his magics, and the iron collar around John's neck begins to glow. John begins to snarl and wobbles for a moment. And the druid thinks that he is gaining control over the wolf. But then the moonstone pulses red. John's eyes flash. He brings his arms up, grips the collar, and with a howl, rips it off of his body. "Fuck," the druid says, before bolting out of the warehouse as he runs, shouting, "Kill the big one." The 4 other prisoners leap into the moonlight and change into their wolf forms, and they all begin to fight. Kafka and Jonah run outside after the man, while John takes on the wolves. We see the nervous prisoner climb back into their cage, pulling a blanket over themselves, ensuring that the moonlight does not touch them. John and the 4 wolves fight, completely destroying the warehouse in the process. And back outside with Jonah and Kafka, they are chasing the druid through the woods, and they soon realize that was a very bad idea. Plants come alive and begin attacking the duo. Animals swarm and bite them. And as they are being choked by vines, Kafka manages to get a shot off and hit the druid in the chest. Druid shouts out in pain and clutches the wound, and the vines fall back down to normal plants. Druid hides and scrambles behind a tree, and then we see him chanting. We cut back to the wolf fight, and we see one of the wolf's eyes glaze purple, and it whips its head around towards the woods and takes off. Wolf John also notices this, but as he does, a spotlight is shined on him from above, and we see the Oscorp security team has arrived, and they open fire on the werewolves. John runs towards the woods with the other wolves following him, and one stays behind, leaping at the helicopter full of men as it goes to land. But one of the soldiers with those massive laser cannons from before blasts the wolf in the head. It collapses to the ground. We see its skull starting to heal, but as it does, the other soldiers all open up fire, completely vaporizing this werewolf. The soldiers then land and chase after the other wolves headed towards the woods. Back in the woods, Jonah and Kafka are trying to find out where the druid has hidden, and as they get closer, Jonah is tackled to the ground by the druid-controlled wolf. Jonah screams out in pain as we see he was cut pretty badly by its claws. The wolf circles Jonah. Jonah pulls out his gun and tries shooting at it again, expending all of his ammunition, and the wolf is unfazed. Jonah braces himself for the worst, but then a bone-chilling howl fills the air, and the druid-controlled wolf darts its head towards the direction of the sound, and we see John sprinting full speed through the woods, tackling the druid wolf to the ground. The other 2 wolves show up shortly after John, and John gets to work. John fights these wolves as Jonah and Kafka keep searching for the druid, and the druid wolf spots them, still searching, and with a bark sends another wolf after the humans as he focuses on fighting John. The Oscorp soldiers storm the woods, and we see them open up fire on the wolves as well, and while all of this is happening, Jonah finds the druid's body. He sees that the man seems unconscious, and gripped in his hand is the gleaming silver cane sword. As Jonah leans down towards the body, we see the other wolf approaching him from behind. It leaps at Jonah, but Jonah whips around, and in his hand is the cane sword, and the wolf crashes on top of him, impaling itself on the silver sword. The silver burns the lycanthrope, and the wolf collapses off of Jonah and bursts into magical flame as it screams in pain. Back with John, he uses one of the other wolves as a meat shield against the Oscorp soldier incoming fire, killing that wolf, leaving only John and the druid-controlled wolf left. The soldiers hold their fire when they notice that the wolves are focusing more on each other rather than them. And Wolf John manages to grab the other werewolf in a hold, stands at his full height, leans back, opening his massive jaws, and lunges at the wolf's head. And we cut back to the druid as we hear a sickening crunch as he snaps awake in a cold sweat. And as he opens his eyes, he is cornered by Kafka and Jonah. He flings his arms up and summons more plants, and he runs away. But as he is running, we see that the gunshot from before is bleeding bad. The druid gets away, and Jonah and Kafka turn back, thinking that the day has been won, but they still hear the sounds of battle. And we see that John is now tearing apart the Oscorp security force. Jonah runs towards his son and yells for him to stop. And Wolf John stops, turns his head towards the new sound, and locks eyes on Jonah. Jonah pleads with John to please stop this, reminding his son that this isn't you. You are not a monster. You're a hero. You're a real hero. The doctors said you wouldn't be able to walk again. You proved them wrong. The world told you you'd never go to space again. You proved them wrong. And now the world is saying that you are a mindless monster. Prove them wrong again. Wolf John snarls and approaches Jonah, Kafka standing behind him. The wolf is darting its eyes between the two of them, baring its teeth. But as it gets closer to them and smells them, the red eyes begin to fade to black. John sniffs them more and then looks around the woods, his head darting another direction. And John takes off. The surviving Oscorp security team approach the other two, and they are taken into custody. And we cut back to the druid. He is pale, he is weak, he is kneeling on the forest floor, and we see him drawing a magical circle in his own blood. He finishes the center of the circle with a message. I found it. He slams his hand onto the circle, it glows, it bursts into flames, and it burns away. The druid smiles, but then hears a twig snap behind him. The camera pans, and crawling out of the woods is John. The druid and John stare at each other. John bares his teeth and pounces. We cut to black. It is New York City 1 month later. We see Oscorp is repaired, and we are back down in the containment lab. And we see that the druid's nervous prisoner is now the one inside the lab. They have taken John's place as the sort of werewolf test subject, but under the eyes of Dr. Kafka, this person is now living a very nice, comfortable, good life as Dr. Kafka and them are working together to try and figure out if they can hopefully cure lycanthropy. And we cut to the Daily Bugle. We see that Jonah has his arm in a sling. He is looking at a picture of him and his son as a child, and because we did nepotism, this can be an actual picture of Lawrence Fishburne and his son when they were younger, which I will love, not the terrible Photoshop that every movie does all the time.
All the time.
Have you been watching Peacemaker?
I haven't seen the second episode yet. I was going to watch this, and
I think in the first episode you can see a picture of Rick Flag Sr. and Rick Flag Jr. It looks kind of like that they do not look like they're in the same room.
One of my biggest pet peeves with movie pictures is also just the fact that like every movie picture of every movie family was taken from clearly that year. So it's like, okay, actors, we just cast you, put on different shirts and stand next to each other really quick. So it's like, oh yes, 3 months ago, what a heartwarming time with me and my son. But thanks to the power of nepotism here, no, we can just bust out like a picture of his 10th birthday, and that's just canon now. Like, we're set. We've got it. Locked in the bag. Yes, we cut to the Daily Bugle, Jonah in a sling. He's looking at that picture, and his phone rings. Jonah picks it up, and John is on the other line. The two of them are talking, and it is very clear that this is not the first phone call that they have had since they last saw each other. John lets his dad know that he is okay, and we cut to John's perspective where he is sitting somewhere in the Nevada desert. He has a tent, he has camping supplies, and Jonah asks him if he thinks he's going to be safe tonight. John looks up at the sky, and we see the sun setting and the full moon clearly visible, and John tells his dad, I think I'll be fine. I'm 50 miles from the nearest gas station. There are plenty of wild rabbits in the area. I think the wolf is going to be nice and distracted. Jonah asks John, is he sure about this? Like, you could come back to New York. We can figure something out. But John assures his dad that this is for the best. If those other 3 wolves could break into the cell, there's no way it would have held him. And besides, and John looks at the moonstone on his chest, I need to find someone who knows about what this thing is. Jonah and John say their goodbyes, and Jonah signs off by telling his son, I love you, son. You're a good man. But there is no response on the other end. We cut back, we see that the cell phone is lying open on the desert ground. The moon has changed John once again, and he howls up at the moon. And we cut to black to some cool metal song playing as credits roll. And that is my pitch for Man-Wolf.
Oh, this was wonderful, man.
This is amazing.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun with this.
Is the druid from the comics?
So, the druid, the character Dreadmond Cromwell, a.k.a. Dreadmond the Druid, first appeared in Strange Tales number 144. So his whole thing is that he is a druid obsessed with the Moonstone. Unfortunately, he did appear in Strange Tales 144, so that's like pre a lot of stuff. Not necessarily Marvel has the rights to all of it.
Right.
And then he appears specifically hunting the Moonstone and the Godstone, which is a Spider-Man-owned premiered thing. But he does it in Captain America when Captain America gets turned into Capwolf.
Yeah.
And so for legal reasons, I'm just calling him the Druid, and I've changed him enough that you can't get us, Marvel. If he's owned by you, you can't get us. And if the legal team goes, no, you're in the clear, then we could drop the name Dreadmond or Cromwell or something like that. Okay. But until then, this is just the Druid.
The Druid.
I also used Inheritor Turk. That is the lunatic from Spider-Man comics.
Okay.
He originates from Other Realm, which is not Other World, which is another thing that Marvel 100%, 1,000,000% owns. And it's the worst is it's 99% identical to Other Realm. But Other Realm is where the Godstone / the Moonstone / the Moon Gem / the Wolf Gem / the Wolf Stone is from. And Lunatic was from it, and he had fought Man-Wolf before. So these are the characters that I brought in just for reference. I've changed the lore a bit. That Lunatic was the one who brought the Godstone here. And there's so much more lore with that, and I have it figured out if y'all want it, and I can talk spoilers about that too. I got. Like any normal person, when offered to pitch a movie for a fan fiction podcast, I also, of course, came up with a sequel. So I do have like a full sequel like pitch thought out as well, because I was debating which one to do, but I realized that I kind of had to do the origin story for this character because the audience would have absolutely no idea who this man is.
Right.
There's nothing else to lean on here of like the werewolf, J. Jonah Jameson's son, the werewolf from space. And everyone's like, what? I'm like, oh yeah, that does need some explaining.
Don't know about that, right?
He has the magic gem that he found on the moon. They're like, no. I'm like, okay.
No. Dude, this was a blast. I think there's no way we don't bring you back if you're down.
I'm absolutely 100% down.
I feel like phase 3 we'll wind up having a few returning podcast guest people, and we would be so down for you to join us, and maybe Noah won't be at a random sports tournament this week.
I don't know, depending on when it is. The water polo tournament is around that time, so gotta look out for those.
That's true.
This was light.
There's grounds now for us to bring in the Lobo cartel, the werewolf cartel down in Mexico. Maybe for a El Muerto sequel or something.
Feel free to cut this. The sequel that I'd written up for Man-Wolf was indeed the Lobo Cartel.
Sweet.
And I wrote a little storyline that it's they're going to transform the whole cartel into werewolves and sort of do a forceful takeover of stuff while John is down there looking into things. And their plan is to embrace the power of the blue moon. So once in a blue moon, werewolves take full wolf form for like a full week. So this thing would be an absolute bloody harvest. So it is for that reason that the working title is Blue Harvest.
No. Yes. No. Yes. We're not bringing you back anymore.
I got my joke out.
Oh my god. Yes.
God.
Why did I ask you to elaborate on the sequel?
I was trying to think of how to work it into this one, and I was like, there's nothing. And I was like, but I could think of a good pun for, I was like, if I was doing a sequel, I was like, I'll just say it's a blue moon or some stupid shit.
I swear, every time, you would think after enough times, the word blue would, like, trigger
Alarm
PTSD, but, like, every time I hear it in context, I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then when people start to continue the sentence, I'm like, bah.
I wasn't sure how I was going to fit harvest in after blue moon, and I was just like, I just got to do it fast.
Blue was all you needed.
This is amazing. Please come back.
Got you.
Oh, man.
Oh my gosh.
I love the blending of once again the mysticism with the sci-fi elements. It's just so cool.
And that's all from the Man-Wolf comics. That is like
It's
entirely just their stuff. It is straight up J. Jonah Jameson, June the 3rd, finds a magic gem that turns him into a werewolf while he's on the moon.
It's so wacky.
And so it's like nothing sci-fi about it, nothing like that. It is full blown. And then of course, the magic behind it. Like, what is this? And it's like, so technically that's the physical embodiment of a wolf god from another dimension, and the portal to that dimension's on the moon. And you're like, what? And it's like, yeah, so like you touched it, and so now you're an embodiment of the wolf god. So you are the god wolf or the star wolf or whatever you want to call yourself. And you can turn into a werewolf. And it's like, oh, so am I like more powerful than other werewolves? It's like, no, actually, pretty much Marvel speaking, you're actually like the weakest werewolf. And it's like the physical embodiment of a wolf god from another dimension, the weakest wolf in the comics?
That's wacky.
And so I was like, no. So here's your Hulk. No. I've given you guys a Hulk. I love Man-Wolf to pieces. Man-Wolf is just the Hulk. Like I love him so much, but his comic, he's a former military aligned guy, astronaut versus physicist developing weapons for them, who got turned into a horrible monster and changes against his will and attacks people and is just on the run and wants to be left the hell alone. I was like, that's the Hulk. And like, it's a different thing. It's like, here's his love interest, who is also affiliated more or less with the project, and the angry general who's hunting him down. I'm like, this is the Hulk. I love you, Marvel. Right. This is the Hulk. And then when he's not the Hulk, he's just the Lizard, because he's constantly being used by other Spider-Man villains and tricked into turning into Man-Wolf so he can then be thrown at people as a weapon. So it's like, he's just the Lizard or the Hulk. So here's a Lizard Hulk for y'all. Throw him wherever you want. Have him fight whatever you want. Y'all got a werewolf to play with now.
We can cut back in right here, but Rad, I'd love for you to try to give the people at home like an idea of what it is you do on TikTok, and sort of talk about the universe that you're building, and where people can follow you. I know you have a podcast of your own that's currently on hiatus that just finished its first phase, if you want to call it that, but just tell the people what you're working on, man.
Yeah, I am Mr. Radtastic. You can follow me on TikTok. You can follow me on YouTube. You can follow me on Instagram, but I don't use it because I don't like Mark Zuckerberg. Dude sucks. So you're not going to find me posting there a lot. I yell about fan fiction. I'm currently on a little bit of a creative hiatus just for a case of writer's block and also relaxation, and also I got to read a bunch more comics for a lot more inspiration, and I don't like putting out stuff with plot holes in it, so I'm not going to release anything if it's not absolutely shored up. So my production schedule is not fast right now, and most importantly, I am working on my own original comic with original heroes in an original universe, all of my own creation, something that can actually like do something for me one day. And so that one I've been putting more work into because that's been so fun.
exciting.
And I have no ETAs for anything. My podcast is the Radical Ideas Podcast because I am rad and they are my ideas. It is currently on hiatus. It will be coming back. I have no intention on canceling it or stopping it or anything like that. Just I don't know exactly when I'm going to be coming back. I took a break so I could have a nice relaxing summer, and then life hit really hard, not in a bad tragic way, just in a like, here's a ton of stuff all in a row, nonstop. Like, good luck. No time for breaks. You want to work on something? Nope. You get free time. You get to sleep. And I'm like, come on, like anything, please. I haven't had a free weekend in 6 weeks. So next weekend is like no plans. I'm going to sleep the whole time. It's going to be great. But yeah, just come on in. I write, like I said, I've written my own DC cinematic universe. It is 60 projects long. It starts with Superman, and I go from there. I rewrite a bunch of the lore of the DC universe. I take every single iteration that I have ever read, and I find the best bits of all of this stuff, and I sort of mash it together into one continuity that works for me and does not fall into any of the pitfalls that a lot of shared universe stuff, in my opinion, falls into. All these heroes act like normal people. They have good lives. They try their hardest, and the threats in each movie are scaled so that the other heroes don't need to show up in them, and you don't have to ask that question of where was Superman when this was happening, since he can fly around the world in 1 second. All shored up with a nice little bow. We're good. That is it. That is my passion. Tune in. And if not, if you're scrolling randomly through TikTok and you see a hand pointing at a TV with some sort of pop culture on it, and it is yelling louder than anything you've ever heard in your life, that's probably me. I apologize for the bit. It's the only way people tune in.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was
a blast.
This is just, it feels like we've been here for longer, but it like time flies, man. It's already been over an hour and a half.
Yep.
And this was such a fun episode.
So much fun.
I'm so excited for this to go up.
I was just to leave you guys with this ammo, should you want it. The hunters that found the druid, I intended those to be the inheritors.
Sweet.
Morlun and all that stuff, based on the fact that two of them, randomly, just the jobber ones, like the lowest tier ones of them, they once hunted Black Panther because they deemed that he was the Panther totem.
Mm-hmm.
They're straight up, they're energy vampires who hunt down animal totems to absorb their animal energy, and the Godstone is a literal embodiment of a wolf god that's full of infinite energy. So I was like, I feel like that'd be a pretty good thing for them to be hunting. So they just found that kid one day, and he was a little magical kid, and they were like, yeah, fuck it, like, hey, you ever just see this fucking weird thing that makes werewolves call us, like, deuce, like, we're out of here. So that's who he called the 911 to. He threw his thing of just like, hey, I saw this. So more London the Inheritors, they could possibly turn their attention towards the spider realm that y'all are cooking up just for fun.
How exciting.
And then just also as a fun, lovely legal loophole, Marvel's Dracula is untouchable because it appears in Marvel and all that type of stuff. Bram Stoker's Dracula is public domain, so just you can do everything. All that. Yeah.
We've had that conversation about Dracula, where that conversation came up. It was like, well, Marvel's Dracula is like long-standing prior to Spider-Man even ever existing, and I was like, but Dracula itself is a public domain concept that has existed far longer than Marvel Comics.
Mm-hmm. You get that guy looking kind of like Mr. Lugosi, you're set, you're done. You don't got to pay anyone a dime.
Up at the time, we were really leaning into the memeing aspect of it behind closed doors, and I threw out casting the guy who does the Dracula Flow video.
I am unfamiliar with
you probably have no clue what I'm talking about.
It's whack. It's this guy. He just says like the most like horrendous
shit, but he's like, dressed as Dracula.
Yeah, and then like it's always in like a dark room and like the light shining on him and he's sweaty and like it's funny.
Really weird.
There's like 4 of them, and each one's almost like 20-30 minutes long of him just saying
they slowly
these, like,
get longer, and he's
things.
just trying to sound like like this cool tough guy.
Yeah.
He's like, I was flipping bricks with Mansa Musa in the Egyptian pyramids. This shit ain't nothing to me, man.
Before you were even a type 1 civilization. Anyways.
Yes.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This was an absolutely fantastic episode. We just got on a whole rant just because it was so much fun having you on, and we're absolutely going to try and get back in touch to have you back again, because this was such a fun episode to record. And like Rad said, if you're interested in checking out more of his stuff, be sure to follow his socials and maybe check out his podcast and catch up on his DC universe. And tune in 2 weeks for our next episode, which I think on our schedule is Peter and Prowler, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So Big Wheel already came out by this point, and then 2 weeks from now is Peter and Prowler. So get excited for that. That one was also an insane episode that you guys are going to absolutely love. So thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.
See
Bye,
ya.
everybody.